طاهر يا ابو الطاهر اعطيني
تم إبلاغنا من قبل أهالي منطقة معرة النعمان بوجود متعهد يقوم بأعمال الحفر من أجل البناء، وأثناء الحفر تم استخراج أو ظهور مدفنين، كل مدفن يحتوي على 6 معازب، 6 قبور بأغطيتها. واستجاب فريق آثار إدلب بالوجود في الموقع بنفس التاريخ، وتم توثيق المدافن وهي تعود للعهد أو للعصر البيزنطي، دليل وجود الصليب عليها. أثناء الحفر تعرضت المعازب إلى نوع ما إلى التخريب، ممكن أن يكون بدون قصد، وتوقف العمل مباشرة عند اكتشاف هذه المدافن.
الباب وين؟ السقف موجود ولا؟
جارنا هون هد البناء وعم يحفر أبو بده يطلع ببناء، فجأة خفست فيهم الأرض ولاني هالمدفنين الموجودين. خبر الجهات الأمن والجهات المختصة، اجوا تفقدوا المكان، وهلا جماعة الآثار عم يتفحصوا المكان، جماعة المتاحف.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's live streaming. I appreciate you all, whether you're watching this stream on YouTube, on Rumble, and on Ganjing World. Today's episode is about the Turkish attempts to own Syria through military deals and in coordination with the Israeli occupation forces. As you can see, Israeli occupation forces are rolling into Syrian territories in Al-Quneitra province, in Daraa, and on the higher hills there without any resistance. And yesterday or today, I posted something on YouTube, which was a post, and that is how the Jolani, basically military and militants, they have been firing American-made Tau missiles against the Syrian army tanks in the past. So they were lions against the Syrian army, which is or was their own military. But then when the Israeli occupation forces roll into Syria, they become like cats and they don't fire any bullet, let alone a Tau missile against the Israeli occupation forces. As one of the commentators said, the dog doesn't bite the hand that feeds him. And this is the reality and the unfortunate reality aftermath in Syria. And the first one, the first video was from Idlib. Some people were trying to renovate a house, so they have destroyed the structure and they were digging inside or under the rubble in order to put fortifications, and they found new antiques related to the Byzantine era. Just for you to know the details, this was a Byzantine era tomb, and this was found during excavation work to rebuild a home in Ma'aret al-Nu'man. This is in Idlib, as seen in the video. Footage shows the burial site with staff from the Directorate of Antiques beginning documentation and excavation. The scenes also reveal columns engraved with a Byzantine cross alongside bones from the graves. I truly hope that they wouldn't destroy this, because if they find the cross, they would probably think that they have to destroy it in order to come closer to God, according to their understanding of whatever religion they believe in, which I truly suspect that they have learned anything and understood their own religion, because I have lived most of my life in Syria, and I haven't met people like the Jolani people, like ISIS people, who nowadays, unfortunately, their voices are very loud, and many people might think that these people are the majority, but they're not. These people, however, hold the guns, and they have the power, the Jacobean power, to subjugate the people and force their opinion and their way of life on the rest of the Syrian people, including against the majority of the Sunni people in Syria. I am talking to people in Aleppo and in Damascus, especially in the business circles, because my father was a businessman in Syria. Also, we're talking to people who are or were in the industrial sector, let's say, in Aleppo and in Damascus, and we're hearing a lot of dissatisfaction, let's say, from the Jolani regime, from Syrian Muslim Sunnis, and they are saying like things to us, especially the Aleppis, that they don't want to live under the Jolani regime's Idlib-style, Taliban-style rule, basically. In any ways, over 100 years ago, after World War I, the French and the Brits, they came and said, oh, we have a brilliant idea. We want to divide the Middle East, which was called West Asia. This is more an imperialist term. Middle East is an imperialist term. In any ways, the Brits and the French, they have divided the region into different countries: Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, Iraq, etc. And the French have taken over some of these countries, and the Brits have taken some other places in West Asia, Middle East. And then the Brits encouraged and established, basically, practically speaking, the state of Israel in Palestine. And because of this foreign intervention in dividing the region, this region has become very unstable. And for over a century, there were endless wars, whether between each other, or foreign invasions, or civil wars, or proxy wars, or different types of clashes, right? This was a huge mistake. Just like when the imperial forces did their job in other places around the world, between Pakistan and India. And as you can see nowadays, the tensions are very high. So this is where I come from, where I always argued that this imperialist power shouldn't intervene in the domestic affairs and in the regional affairs of the region. Then they did it continuously, also under the US Empire, because the US has succeeded the British Empire, and they have copied basically the UK or the British Empire policies in the region: interventions, covert operations, psyops, regime change, wars, coup d'etats, etc. Now, however, things have probably changed. This is at least according to the US ambassador in Turkey. His name is Ambassador Tom Barak. And according to him, he says this era of imperial powers intervening in the Middle Eastern and West Asian affairs is over. Wow. So are they going to give the people their real independence? Are they going to give them their financial independence? Are they going to give them the right to govern themselves? Are they going to give them the right to have their own leaders? Are they going to give them the right to have their own policies and to pursue their own interests, right? The answer is no. The US is now shifting its rhetoric, but the core of the issue is still the same. And nowadays we have Ambassador Tom Barak, as I mentioned. He said something very hilarious on his own X account, which if you read it, you would think that he's a revolutionary person and he cares about the people of the region, basically. And he says, a century ago, the West imposed maps, mandates, penciled borders, and foreign rule. Sykes-Picot divided Syria and the broader region for imperial gain, not peace. That mistake cost generations. We will not make it again. The era of Western interference is over. The future belongs to regional solutions, but partnerships and the diplomacy grounded in respect. As President Trump emphasized in his May 13th address in Riyadh, gone are the days when Western interventionists would fly to the Middle East to give lectures on how to live and how to govern your own affairs. Syria's tragedy was born in division. Its rebirth must come through dignity, unity, and investment in its people. That starts with truth, accountability, and working with the region, not around it. We are standing with Turkey, the Gulf, and Europe. This time not with troops and lectures or imaginary boundaries, but shoulder to shoulder with the Syrian people themselves. With the fall of the Assad regime, the door is open to peace. By eliminating sanctions, we are enabling the Syrian people to finally open that door and discover a path to renewed prosperity and security. Those are amazing words by the US ambassador to Turkey, Tom Barak, who is also the US special envoy to Syria. So he is also monitoring the Syrian affairs and coordinating between Turkey and Syrian regime from Ankara. In any ways, what happened in the past 2 to 3 decades was a consistent, planned attempt and imposed policies on the region to redraw the Middle East. It doesn't necessarily mean that the United States wanted to change the borders of the region. However, it wanted to change these relationships in the region between these different countries and the regional countries, and especially the countries that resisted the US hegemony in the region, those countries and actors, let's say state and non-state actors, who said, look, we want our independence. This is like what Ambassador Tom Barak now is claiming, right? The people said, we want our independence, and that means we want our own national resources, to have our hands over our own national resources. We don't want foreign corporations to come and take over our natural resources. They said we want to have our national economies, we want to have our national currencies, and we want to have our own economic advancement and development and GDP based on our production and exporting our products to the rest of the world. This is what independence means. And therefore, the US went into business as usual and one by one destroyed every state and non-state actor in the region, in exception for Iran. Iran is the only country, it's the only player now in the region which can or who can impose against the United States certain measures to serve its own interests. The rest, like even Yemen, they're able to fire missiles on Israel and on its air bases, but they're not able yet to change equations. The only power now in the region which can change equations is Iran. However, because Iran built a network of alliances in the region, which the US and Israel said those were the arms of the octopus, right? Trying to encircle and suffocate the US dominance over the region, they have destroyed, came after arm after arm after arm after arm. So Iran is now more isolated than it was 10 years ago. So I would argue here that the United States succeeded and managed to weaken to the maximum level the players which can pose a threat to the US dominance over the region, which means from now on, they don't need to have they don't need to pursue a policy that is based on direct intervention in the region, or pursue policy of sending tens of thousands of troops to occupy a country like Iraq, or loot the Syrian oil, for example. They don't need to do these things. Because if you put the map in front of you, you will see that Egypt is a friendly country to the United States. South Sudan is completely South Sudan and North Sudan, they were at war against each other, and now South Sudan has become very pro-US and pro-Israel, and North Sudan is now in a civil war again, and all sides fighting each other are basically sending signals to the US and Israel that they are interested in friendly relationship with them. Then you have Lebanon, which had a very strong non-state actor, Hezbollah, whose entire leadership has been decapitated. And now the current Secretary General of Hezbollah, Sheikh Naim Qasim, and this is something that I say because I'm honest and I don't want to hide behind my finger, I watched several speeches of Sheikh Naim Qasim, and I would say with great confidence, he cannot fill the shoes of Hassan Nasrallah. There is no way for him to fill the shoes of Hassan Nasrallah. He was an irreplaceable personality with, I would argue, strategic mind, who had his grip basically over his society, and he has built a network of alliances within Lebanon and across the region, and he has built an army capable of fighting tete-a-tete against Israeli occupation forces. And I would go one step further and I say, were it not for the Air Force of Israel, Hezbollah can defeat Israel easily, right? But their situation now is very dire, and they have now an issue, and that is a Lebanese government making deals with the United States, basically agreeing to disarm Hezbollah. Are they going to be able to do that? I suspect. However, the domestic situation for Hezbollah is not good, and the regional situation is even worse. They don't have an access to Syria or Iran any longer. And now, if you remember what happened a few days ago, the Palestinian Authority president, whatever, this piece of piece of nothing, basically, Mahmoud Abbas, he was in Lebanon, and he met with the president of Lebanon because they want to disarm the Palestinian factions in the Palestinian refugee camps, which I support, by the way. Because, look, the Palestinians shouldn't have weapons inside Lebanon, and especially when these weapons are in no way or shape basically helping the Palestinian cause. It is in the refugee camps, and there are sometimes clashes among each other. I don't think that is okay in any country. But the issue of Hezbollah is different because Hezbollah, first of all, came from the Lebanese society to repel and push out the Israeli occupation forces. And finally, there is a consensus, or was a consensus at least, among the Lebanese society that Hezbollah represents a resistance against the Israeli occupation forces, and Hezbollah was recognized by the Lebanese government and successive Lebanese government as a resistance organization against Israel. Now this is changing. Imagine this few days ago, I think on the 25th of May, it was the day and the commemoration of the liberation of southern Lebanon from the Israeli occupation forces. And Israeli occupation forces withdrew from Lebanon on May 25th, the year 2000. So the prime minister of Lebanon tweeted on X, basically saying that today is the day of the liberation. But the official name of this day is not the day of the liberation. It is called the day of resistance and liberation. عيد المقاومة والتحرير in Arabic. But he took out that because they don't want to give credit to Hezbollah. So as you can see, Prime Minister, President, and a lot of political forces, NGOs, media outlets, huge number of media outlets have been spawned in Lebanon. And many of them are funded by Saudi Arabia, by Qatar, by Turkey, and by the United States. So the situation also in Lebanon is not good at all. Syria has gone completely in the hands of the US, Israel, Turkey, Qatar, etc. Jordan is a friendly country to the United States. Iraq, at least on the government level, they are friendly to the United States. And they will come after Iraq. After what happened in Syria, they will come after Iraq and they will try to minimize the Iranian influence there. So if you put the map of control in front of you, the ambassador of the United States is coming from a position of someone who knows that the US already has and enjoys superiority over the region, and therefore all these friendly actors in the region, they can do the job of the United States. The United States doesn't want to have direct intervention in the region any longer, but they will task other powers to do what the United States wants them to do, and that includes Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Turkey, and Israel. Those are the main powers, right? Therefore, all this talk about like the era of Sykes-Picot is over. So we will give the people what they want. No, they will not give the people what they want. They will not give the people their natural resources. In the contrary, they will come to Syria and they will privatize the economy and they will suck all the minerals from Syria and they will build their own corporations there, giving Syrians some opportunities, especially when it comes to job opportunities, but the people will not own anything from these investments. It's not their companies, and it's not their corporations who are extracting this oil, and it's not their companies that are exporting the Syrian products, right? So, as I said in the past, this is the same script of the World Economic Forum. You will own nothing, and you will be happy. Happy Bati. So, the ambassador, however, this ambassador Thomas, what was his name? His name was Tom Barak. I said Thomas. Tom Barak, there are allegations against him that he has close ties with Qatar. And so first things first, in 2012, guys, Barak's firm, he had a firm called Colony Capital. He sold a resort in Costa Smeralda, Italy, to the Qatar Investment Authority, QIA, for 680 million euros. This transaction led to 22 million tax settlement in Italy due to the allegation of tax evasion related to the sale. Additionally, Barak partnered with QIA, or the Qatar Investment Authority, to acquire the film production company Miramax for $660 million. In 2016, he sold Miramax to Qatar's BN Media Group, or Al Jazeera. These business ventures were legal but contributed to broader concerns about foreign influence in US politics, especially given Barak's close ties to the current president, Donald Trump. It is worth noting that Barak faced legal challenges unrelated to Qatar. In 2021, he was indicted on charges of acting as an unregistered foreign agent for the United Arab Emirates, obstruction of justice, and making false statements. Prosecutors allege that he used his relationship with Trump to advance UAE interests without proper disclosure. However, in November 2022, Barak was acquitted of all charges. So basically, he has close ties to the Gulf countries, including the UAE and Qatar. And he's in direct communication now, especially with the Qatari side, which has enormous influence over Turkey, which is basically paying the debt of Turkey at so many times. Every time the Turkish economy goes into tatters, the Qataris come and funnel billions of dollars into the economy, into the Turkish economy. And eventually, this ambassador, who has American ambassador who has close relationship with Qatar and Turkey and the Emiratis. He's sitting in Ankara and he's coordinating with these powers about the future of Syria. So he's doing the same thing like Sykes and Picot did 110 or 20 years ago. What is the difference between what the French and the Brits did compared to what he is doing at the current moment? They're deciding the fate of Syria. They're deciding what type of economy Syria should adopt. They're deciding which investors can come and funnel money into the country. They're deciding who will own the natural resources, the earth minerals, the fuel, etc., etc., etc. They're doing the same thing, like the French and the Brits. But in public, they're coming and saying things that sound great. This is the end of the Western interventionism in the region. It is not. The US won the region. It has neutralized the threats against the US dominance in the region. And now that they have done it, they're coming and pretending that they don't want to intervene in the region any longer, but they're doing it behind closed doors through these diplomatic channels, especially between these regional powers. So two of these powers, in my opinion, are going to get the biggest share of the Syrian cake, and those powers are Turkey and Israel. And because that is the case, they have established basically deconfliction channels between or hotline over Syria. So Turkey and Israel have established a hotline to prevent possible military flare-ups and misunderstandings in Syria. Turkish and Israeli officials have been meeting in the Azerbaijan capital, Baku, since April for direct talks to resolve their differences regarding Syria, while Ankara emerged as a key actor following the ouster of Bashar al-Assad in December. The Israeli government expressed deep concern over the new status quo, publicly opposing any Turkish military deployment to the country. Although Turkish officials have repeatedly stated they would not allow a sphere of influence in Syria that would permit countries like Israel to strike areas at will, sources said the discussions are focusing on finding a way forward that could satisfy both countries' concerns. So a source familiar with the negotiations said the Israeli government was largely comfortable with Turkey deploying land forces, including tanks and infantry, in Syria. However, the main question was where Ankara would place its air defense systems and radars, which could monitor Israeli air operations. So the main problem that Israel had with Turkey is not that Turkey has many tanks in Syria and soldiers in Syria, but because Turkey wants to install radars and also air defenses in Palmyra. And if they do it, then they can detect the movement of the Israeli Air Force when they depart from Haifa or from Tel Aviv on their way to strike something in the region, or worse, if they want to launch attacks against Iran. So if Turkey can detect the Israeli aerial movement in the region, probably Iran would also detect that, or probably they could share this information with Iran, or Iran could have its electronic warfare against Turkey, and by doing so, they could take over some of these data from the Turkish side. So this is the main problem that Israel has with Turkey. Not that Turkey is present in Syria, because they need Turkey in Syria, because they know that this jihadi scene that they have created, Americans, Israelis, and these regional powers, they have created this jihadi scene in Syria, and they know how dangerous it is to leave them alone, basically. So they need a power like Turkey, which can put them under certain level of control, right? And their man, Jolani, they need him because he's one of the jihadists. Like during this time, when the regime is gone, there is a big vacuum. If you bring someone like Manaf Atlas, who was the son of the former defense minister of Syria, later deserted and fled the country to Saudi Arabia. He has close ties to Saudi Arabia and the French intelligence, basically. So if they select someone who is not a jihadi, then all these tens of thousands of jihadis may not listen to him, right? So they need someone like Jolani, who is one of them, one of these militants, so that they keep a certain level of control, keep certain level of control over these groups, and or reorient their military activities basically against the minorities instead of orienting them against Israel. So Ankara says that it needs this basis, and to easily and quickly track and strike IS groups. This is bullshit, of course. So Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan has repeatedly said that Ankara would not intervene if the Syrian and Israeli governments found a way forward. One of the main sticking points for Israel is maintaining the operational capability to fly over Syria without being detected by Turkish radars, should Israel decide to strike Iranian nuclear assets in the coming months. See? Separately, Israel and Syria are holding their own talks in Baku to resolve their differences. The talks, which are supported by Turkey and Azerbaijan, focus on confidence-building measures between the two countries. And as part of these efforts, Reuters reported this week that Syria had handed over a trove of documents and photographs belonging to Israeli agent Eli Cohen, who was hanged in a downtown Damascus square 6 decades ago after collecting intelligence on Syrian military plans. On the other side, we have this deconfliction center that they have established, it seems, in Baku. So Turkish and Syrian officials, basically, in extension or in parallel of these deconfliction talks that happened between Turkey and Israel, the Turkish, let's say, security and military officials and Jolani's military and security officials, they are in constant meetings, whether in Syria or in Damascus. And they say that they're talking about military ties and counterterrorism. And this comes, of course, in parallel of separate talks between Turkey and Washington about the Kurdish presence in Syria, right? And the fate of the Kurdish groups. So Turkey's intelligence chief, his name is Ibrahim Kalin, and the senior military delegation, they have paid a surprise visit to Damascus this week. And this was only yesterday, on Tuesday, as Ankara ramps up its Syria diplomacy following US President Donald Trump's decision to lift sanctions on the war-torn country earlier this month. So the Turkish and Syrian officials also discussed cooperation against what Ankara deems as terrorist groups, the Turkish officials say. The terrorist groups, according to Turkey, are the PKK, the SDF, the Kurdish militias. But according to other powers in the region, those are ISIS, al-Nusra. So Turkey, of course, equates the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces, or the SDF, they equate them with the Kurdistan Workers' Party, the PKK, and which had been waging an armed campaign for the Kurdish self-rule inside Turkey since 1984. Although the United States and the EU consider the PKK a terrorist group, the SDF continues to serve as a key US ally in the fight against ISIS. Now, there is a new update about the PKK, and this has happened, I believe, a week ago or 10 days ago. And this was an announcement by Öcalan himself that he will end this armed struggle against Turkey, which started in 86, we said, right? In 84. Öcalan declared the dissolution of the armed struggle against the Turkish state. And this comes at the same time, or in the same context, of the attempt to destroy or neutralize or pacify all other non-state actors, just like the ones I mentioned in Lebanon, Hezbollah, Hamas, Jihad, the Palestinian armed groups or factions in Palestinian refugee camps in Lebanon. So what they're doing, basically, there is a regional consensus among these powerful regional powers to eliminate and neutralize and pacify all these non-state actors and try to turn them into some political actors or completely destroy them. And this comes at a time when these regional powers are trying to strike gas deals, for example, between Syria and Turkey, between Qatar and Syria. Saudi Arabia is trying to build an economic model in the region, 2030 economic vision or model for Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia's attempt to host, they will host the World Cup, not the next one, the one after, right? So they want to create a region that is stable in their eyes or for their own interests, so they can further advance their own security and financial interests in the region. So those are the facts that we're having at the current moment about these non-state actors and the, let's say, the American pursuit to neutralize these groups. And this is one of the demands that Trump made to Jolani. And Trump told Jolani that he has to kick out the multinational terrorist groups or the terrorists from Syria, right? Including the Islamic Turkestan Army or the Turkestan Islamic Army. For those who don't know, Turkestan Islamic Army is one of the strongest military forces in Syria. Their numbers are between 5,000 to 10,000 militants belonging to the Uyghurs of West China. Basically, they came all the way to Turkey, and then Erdogan sent them to Jisr Shughur, to Idlib, and they have opened them military camps and training camps, etc. And now, after the regime change, Trump said these militants have to leave the country. But Jolani, he appointed them in the Ministry of Defense. So Jolani appointed many of these Uyghurs in senior positions in the Syrian security, intelligence, and military apparatuses. And only this week, this Jolani regime integrated this Islamic Turkestan army, basically, in its military. So now the Islamic Turkestan army is an integral and essential part of the Syrian Arab army. And for those who don't know, the head of this Islamic Turkestan terrorist army is based in Afghanistan, and he issues orders to his followers in Syria. After the fall of the Assad government in December 2024, the US made the expulsion of foreign fighters a key prerequisite for lifting US sanctions. In March 2025, Washington formally demanded their removal in a letter to Damascus. However, Jolani continued to delay actions, insisting that foreign fighters that helped in getting rid of Assad deserve respect. He doesn't only say that, but he also says that he wants to give them Syrian passport, basically. So Turkestan Islamic Army or party fighters were assigned to the newly created 84th Division. So there is a division or a unit in the Syrian army called the 84th Division, and they made up largely now of Uyghur militants and other foreign combatants from Central Asian countries. This is a video of them. This is the the Unit 84, the Islamic Turkestan Army, and those are the militants of the Islamic Turkestan Army, basically, as you can see. Now we have Uyghurs in the Syrian army. And they're very well-trained, well-organized, very disciplined, and very strong fighters, basically. And so imagine what these people may do in the next years if they try to leave or they decide to leave Syria. And if they want to go to China again, they will pose a serious threat against the Chinese security. Now let's move a little bit to some local issues that happened in Syria in the past week, especially the documented crimes against the minorities, against women, and against men, summarily executions, abductions, looting and destruction of restaurants, etc. in the country. So I will start with this report made by Samer Slibi. Samer says the Valley of the Christians. So in Syria, there is a Valley of Christians, right? You can see this circle here. This circle is called the Valley of Christians. It's mostly inhabited by Christians. So the Valley of the Christians, known for its peace and natural beauty, is under threat. In the heart of this region lies Mesht al-Helu. I was there many times. Guys, I just don't want to exaggerate, but it's like, I don't want to say it's like Switzerland, but it's so beautiful. The green, the waters, the rivers, the lakes. It's also close to the Mediterranean. It's so beautiful. So this is Mesht al-Helu. It's in the Christian Valley. It's a remote town that has stayed out of Syria's civil war. Its people have not taken up arms nor sent their children to the front lines. Their only source of livelihood is domestic tourism. which thrives on the area's forests and landscapes. Now the HTS-affiliated regime is cutting down trees in Masht al-Hulu to build a military base. This destruction will not only scar a pristine environment, but will introduce a militarized presence into peaceful civilian area. As a result, tourism will decline, and families who depend on it may be forced to leave or face economic ruin. This is more than an environmental issue. It is part of a systematic pattern of displacement targeting Christian communities. And I agree with him 100%. Like, there are ways for the Jolani regime to target Christians and Alawites and Druze and Kurds in an indirect way without now coming after them and killing them. And one of the cases, for example, that the Jolani regime is doing, basically, they don't dare to go and ban alcohol, for example. Why? Because it's a bad optics in front of their Western backers and these prostitutes in Western mainstream media. It is a bad optics for them. Instead, what they do, basically, they unleash and they send masked thugs and to do the dirty job. They go, they raid, they wreak havoc, they terrorize the owners of restaurants in order to force them into shutting down their businesses. And this is one of the videos about this case. This is a restaurant in Damascus. So this was only 2 or 3 days ago. Sorry, this was in Tartus. So they go into this restaurant and they just destroy the restaurant because they want this business to be closed, to be shut down. So they don't dare to ban alcohol or ban restaurants from serving alcohol, but they do things like this so that they force them to close their businesses. So this is all coordinated attacks, in my opinion, against this type of businesses because they're trying to change the nature of the Syrian society, the Syrian communities, the Syrian state, basically, right? And this has been also something that was asserted and approved by other reporters and monitors of the Syrian war, one of which is Greco-Levantines. They say it is not a coincidence that 4 Christian towns, Ma'lula, Maharde, Qusayr, and Saqelbiye, faced attacks and harassments immediately following the partial lifting of sanctions. Those who harbored deep resentment towards these communities were merely waiting for this moment to retaliate, knowing that sanctions would no longer hinder their actions. We call upon our brothers and sisters in Greece and Cyprus to act swiftly and raise this issue within the European Union. Brother, the European Union is on the side of Jolani. This is something that sometimes I'm like, I meet people, I go to, for example, to demonstrations, and I meet people telling me, oh, we have to talk to the US administration, or they give me names of people who are influential in the US or even in Israel, like they think these people will help them. And it's not funny, really. It's not funny. But one of the main reasons for the misery of the Syrian people are the same people now who claim that they care about the Syrian people, right? Including the lifting of sanctions. And this has been something which was claimed by, again, the US ambassador to Turkey, who is now the US special envoy to Syria. And he posted basically a post saying why he met with Jolani, because he met Jolani, right? I will show you their photos together now, just for you to also, if I saw it, you have to see it as well. So this is the US ambassador. They sit now together in Ankara, and Jolani acts like a good boy. And basically, to summarize all this big, long post, he's saying we are lifting the US sanctions because we care about the Syrian people and we want them to have a fresh start. We want them to reconstruct their country. We want them to invest in their own industries and in their own sectors, etc., etc. But the truth of the matter is, they don't care about the Syrian people. If they did, they wouldn't have imposed the sanctions to begin with. Now that they all agree, Americans, Europeans, even Jolani's minions in the US and elsewhere, who worked day and night and lobbied, excuse me, I have to drink a water. all these so-called Syrian oppositionists, mercenaries, basically, who worked for over a decade to impose more draconian sanctions on the Syrian people, even they now say that sanctions hurt the Syrian people. But when I said it in the past 10 years, I was an Assadist. Now they say we have to lift these sanctions because they hurt the Syrian people. I agree. It hurt the Syrian people. But why are they lifting it now? They don't care. If they cared about the Syrian people, they wouldn't have imposed it to begin with. So the thing is, now they do it because Jolani is in power and they have neutralized their enemy or their foe from Syria. That's it. Sanctions have served the purpose. The regime change operation was successful. And now a US asset is basically the president of Syria. So why would they keep the sanctions? This is the truth, as simple as it is. Another horrible news coming from Syria, and I have to show you a few things because I'm reporting them on my YouTube channel, on my X account, but I have to show them to you too here because those are very important things. So this woman, she's 16 years old. She was kidnapped on March 25th of this year. And recently, the abductor, whoever he is, sent a photo of her showing visible bruises on her face and demanded a large ransom from her mother. So this is the woman was abducted. I'm not saying she was abducted by the Jolani regime, see? But in an unstable and unsafe Syria, women are being abducted. And coincidentally, the vast majority of these women are Alawites. And this is the photo that whoever he is sent to her mother and asking for a big ransom. It's quite obvious that also she was tortured. Another woman who was again went missing in Jolani's Syria. Her name is Basmala Samir Ahmad. She is 17 years old, student from Latakia, again an Alawite. And I'm saying, I can't believe I'm saying this, but Syrian families in the coastal cities should stop sending their daughters to schools and universities until the issue of abductions is addressed and solved. No education is more important than one's life and well-being. Another woman who is again abducted and confirmed by her brother. This time, Jolani's thugs abducted her. Jolani's thugs kidnapped this young woman, Abir Younes Suleiman, as she was heading from her village to the city of Tartus on the 21st May around 11 a.m. According to her brother, Abir called their father, but he couldn't answer immediately. When he tried calling her back, her phone was off. At 2:15 p.m., they received a call from a person speaking with an Iraqi accent, probably from Deir ez-Zor, who threatened them and said he would not release her. By the way, this is another example. This entire family was kidnapped, these two little girls and this boy. Only recently, 48 hours ago, these two little girls were released and the boy is still in captivity. The issue is many people from these Jolani's minions, they come to my posts basically saying that I'm lying, right? And those reports are all confirmed by human rights organizations, especially the ones like, for example, Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. And this is not an Assadist organization. In the contrary, it was one of the most anti-Assad outlets or observatories during the entirety of the Syrian conflict. What they're trying to tell, basically, and say that I am lying and I'm spreading misinformation and lies because I just dislike Jolani. And I want to say something. It is only a person without an honor and dignity and complete lack of morality, like somebody who is not, I don't want to say not a human, only a psychopath, let's say, would spread such lies and disinformation on social media for clicks or to score points against anyone. This is not a game, right? This is not some fairy tale game or stories. Those are real stories. So if you think that I would post something false to score points against the Jolani regime, and especially when it comes to little and young women, you don't know me. You don't know me at all. You don't know who I am. You don't know what are my intentions, and you don't know my value system or what I believe in. Because if I do that, I'm not a respectable person. All these examples that I published, they were published first in Arabic-speaking outlets, and I have verified them. In some of the cases, there were phone numbers attached with the appeal or the announcement. So if somebody finds this little girl or this young woman, etc., they would call to this number, right? So Jolani's minions come to my X account and they say I'm lying. And I tell them, here is the number, call. This is the family's number. Call them and come back and apologize. They would never do that. So for those who are watching and they're like suspicious of my reporting, everything that I'm reporting there are factually true. And those are documented and confirmed by multiple sources. So how do you explain that all of a sudden tens of Syrian women disappeared? Every day there is a Syrian woman disappearing. And why is it happening only after the fall of the former Assad regime? And why 99% of these women are Alawites? And this Jolani's minion and come and say things like, but this woman, all of a sudden, tens of Syrian women decided to flee their homes and go with their lovers, secret lovers, right? Look, you may say such things to someone who is not Syrian, but you cannot sell this BS to me. You cannot convince me that in the morning a woman took a bus or a taxi or a van to go to her school or university or college or to work, and on her way to her work or to education, she decided to escape to Idlib. I don't think there is a sane person who would do that. No sane woman from Latakia, Tartus, Jable, Banyas, Homs, Hama, Aleppo would just flee to Idlib with a jihadi person, especially if she is an Alawite. And everybody who is a Syrian knows that these Alawite women are ages, probably centuries ahead in their mental capacity, in their intellectual capacity, in their norms and beliefs and values and religion compared to these Takfiri jihadists. So you cannot really convince me that all these tens of women who disappeared, they just ran to their secret lovers. This is what they're trying to convince us, basically. So ridiculous. Just final news, another bad news, of course. So this young man, basically, his name was Zain Iyad. He was 18 years old. And basically, this happened in Jable. This young man, Zain Iyad, 18 years old, was killed by the bullets of extremist gunmen affiliated with Jolani regime, who stormed the village of Ashrafiyya in Jable countryside on a motorcycle. They stopped the young man and then shot him directly in the head while shouting, "God is great," or "Allahu Akbar," and left the area. So let's see what these Jolani minions are going to say about this case. It's happening every day. Like, it's not happening on the same scale like it happened 3 months ago, because that was something that went out of hands. It was basically genocide against the Alawites, but it is happening every day. I dare anyone to say that this is factually incorrect. Every day there is someone is missing, somebody is killed, somebody is being beaten up. Every day, or a restaurant is being attacked and destroyed, or women are being killed in clubs every day. So this is Syria. It's no longer Syria anyways, it's Daeshistan. So tomorrow I'm going to try to cover what's happening in South Africa, I cannot really promise you to be able to do that, but I will try to find someone who is more balanced, because the conversation about South Africa, it concerns me. I like South Africa. I like the South African people. I have a best friend from South Africa where I live. And I'm very much interested in visiting South Africa. And I'm also interested in the stories of South Africa. So if you know someone who is balanced and objective about this case, I would like to hear the story of South Africa and what is these allegations about white genocide in South Africa. And I'm not an expert, so I would like to hear the thoughts. Maybe, of course, there are reports about killings against white farmers, but genocide, I mean, when it comes from the US, when the US doesn't call what's happening in Gaza a genocide, but calls what's happening in South Africa genocide, I take it with a grain of salt. But I would like to talk about it. So if you know someone, a name who can address this case in a comprehensive and objective manner, please leave the name in the comments below, not in the live chat, because once this live streaming is over, then the live chat is gone. So leave it as a comment under the video and I will go through them tonight. And if I can, I will extend my invitation to speak about this case. So this was all for today, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's live streaming. I appreciate you all. Before leaving, I would appreciate it more if you can hit the like button, leave a comment and subscribe. We are only 100 subscriptions away from hitting the 100K goal. And if you want to support the independent work I'm doing, you can become a patron, patreon.com/Syriana Analysis. Or if you don't want to use Patreon, there are different other means in the description below. And I will see you tomorrow at 5 p.m. Central European Time, 11 a.m. Eastern American Time. Peace be upon you and upon your families. Salam.